Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Orbital in Conversation with. I'm Olivia Taylor and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Orbital magazine.
Hi, I'm Beth McCowan. I'm the deputy editor-in-chief of the Orbital magazine, and today we're joined by...
My name is Rachel and I am a former RHUL graduate and now a policy advisor at Alzheimer's Research UK.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. So I thought I would start off by giving a little bit of background as to how we're here, how we all know each other. So anyone who's watched any of our previous episodes will probably know exactly what Model United Nations is, because me and Liv don't ever stop talking about it.
Yeah.
But Rachel is another lovely friend who we got to know through Model UN, which is amazing. So we were all in New York together, had a really cool experience, all of this training. And yeah, that's how we kind of got to know each other. And now, yeah, one of our very good friends, and I'm very excited to have her on the podcast.
So let's get started. So obviously you said kind of you did your master's at Royal Holloway. Yes. But obviously with the Orbital magazine, something we're big into talking about is journalism. And so journalism as an undergraduate degree, from what I know anyway, is not really as popular in the UK. But you did study journalism as your undergraduate. And where did you study it? And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I did my undergrad in journalism and communications. It's kind of like a side-by-side degree at a tiny university in Minnesota called University of St. Thomas, Roll Toms. And we basically, you could kind of choose which path you wanted to do, either focusing on PR or you could do a bit of journalism. I had this picture that I was going to be this epic travel journalist, so I went down the journalism route. And basically, we did lots of broadcast classes. So I've done some wild, even up to like spelling tests. They wanted to train us to make sure that we didn't rely too heavily on our computers or spell check or anything like that. I had one professor who would literally, in his wheelie chair, roll around and pretend to give a news briefing. And then when he rolled back around, if we didn't catch anything, like he's out of the room. So we needed to like quickly jot down all these notes and kind of get it together. So I did focus on a lot of broadcast work. And then separately on the communication side, we did a lot of PR introductory, which I was not interested in at all, which is a little bit funny in hindsight because I did actually go into PR.
Yeah, no, that's I think because I've been considering going into, I think both of us have been considering doing kind of the journalism masters, and I think that difference between the journalism we know as like almost a hobby right now, to actually doing the studies that what makes the degree is really fascinating. I remember going to an open day at the university that I'm looking at for applying for the masters, and like all of the kind of technical stuff you do is so like different to what I'm used to, or all the broadcasting and things like that is just mental.
Yeah, I mean, they teach you everything down to how you roll up the cord. I remember one of our professors was really stressed about, like, he didn't want to send any of us into the workplace and not know how to, because they're really expensive, those TV cords, and they're really thick. And if you roll them up the wrong way, you can get them jumbled and then they break. And he was just really passionate that he didn't want to send us out and then one of us get fired immediately for rolling up the cord the wrong way. Yeah.
I mean, fair enough.
So just really down to the nitty gritty. I think you learned such a vast amount of skills, I think. Yeah,
definitely. Thank you. So kind of leading on from that, after you graduated in Minnesota, what did you kind of find yourself doing? A couple of different questions in here, so feel free to answer kind of however you like. But also you've obviously lived in a few different places. Were those two things kind of interrelated? Kind of, yeah, what happened next?
Yeah, so I graduated with the, I guess, idea that I'd go and travel. For context, no one really leaves Minnesota. So I interviewed a lot of professors to get some advice on what to do. And they all told me to pick the safe route. They're like, just go into a normal 9-to-5 job. Like, don't do anything crazy, which of course I did the opposite. And so I got offered a couple of different communications roles, but one was at a PR agency. And it was just a 6-month internship. And I didn't feel like I knew anything about PR at all. I literally just put all my effort into learning journalism. And so they hired me I don't know how. And I did my 6 months there. And then when it came to kind of talk about if they would hire me full time, I decided to tell them I was going to go backpack, and I chose New Zealand. And that was kind of my plan. And they ended up knowing the CEO at an agency in New Zealand to kind of connect me with. So it was really great. I ended up going to New Zealand kind of with a job in hand, and worked at a consumer PR agency and ended up doing that for a bit. Yeah. So very roundabout way. I really didn't think I was a PR kind of gal, but it really opened up quite a lot of doors for me after I kind of dipped my toes in. Yeah.
Amazing.
So obviously we kind of touched on that you obviously did your master's at RHUL Holloway, and that's how we know you, but what did you do your master's in, and how did your undergraduate degree in journalism and communications kind of help you get into where you were in your master's?
Yeah. I think journalism is one of those degrees like similar to history where it just gives you such a good foundation to go into whatever you want. Like even the most random jobs, if you look at the descriptions, they'll accept journalism degrees and history degrees, and like that's just kind of like a all-rounder. They know kind of what they're getting. And so yeah, at RHUL Holloway, ended up doing my master's in international public policy. I was really interested in politics in my undergrad, but I didn't like pursue it at all. And then yeah, I decided that was something I wanted to do. And to be honest, journalism was instrumental because the workforce needs good writers, and you wouldn't believe when you get into the workforce how many people that is not their strong suit. And so it just sets you so far above and beyond what everyone else can do. And just learning how to write fast and get to the point and I guess communicate these really complex ideas, which that is just a journalist skill to have, I think, has been incredibly helpful throughout doing my master's and going into work again, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Thank you so much. And kind of off the back of that, we wanted to ask if there was any writing recently that you've done that you can tell us about. Like, is it still something that's kind of a big part of what you do both in and outside of work, or is it kind of something that has been more of a stepping stone? Obviously, everyone's journey is really different, so we'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I do a lot of writing. I mean, my job in PR used to be just all writing. I mean, that was all I did all day. Content, social media, press releases. I mean, you name it, that was the job. But now I do a bit more research than writing, I'd say. But I do have a little bit of a side gig, and this is going to be random, but I have been writing for kind of advocating, I guess, for more data governance, data ownership, particularly in relation to blockchain technology. And so I'm a technology and policy freelance writer for a company who is trying to basically take the spam out of Bitcoin, because it's used in a lot of healthcare industries and a lot of other kind of industries. And that's been so helpful because it's flexing my writing muscle. I was really nervous I'd lose it, because my job isn't quite the same in terms of writing these thought leadership pieces. So I'm doing some writing on the side, and I would say I'm enjoying it almost just as much as my normal job, which is good. So for the time being, I'll keep it up. I'm not sure how long I can juggle both, but we'll take it.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think it's really like it must be a challenge trying to do, I find it anyway, just even doing my degree, but like trying to write for one thing and then another thing and then kind of mixing them all together, and it becomes so good. So
and I do see them intertwined. The other day I was looking on LinkedIn, and they were Alzheimer's Research UK was doing like a promotion about donating, and then they ended up bringing in how you can donate through using Bitcoin, and I had this weird like all my worlds are colliding.
Worlds colliding. Yeah, I was hoping to get you talking about the blockchain writing, because I just think it's so interesting, and I love how kind of like it's quite different to, I think, a lot of other stuff that you've done. So I just think it's a really good example of how kind of like multifaceted journalism can be and how many different directions it can take you in.
Totally. Yeah, it is. Honestly, I couldn't even if you gave me a crystal ball 10 years ago and told me I was going to be writing about this, I don't know anything about blockchain. And I guess that's the skills you learn, I guess, in getting a journalism degree, is how to ask the right questions, how to research, how to, you know, put it into lay terms. And that's just been the best thing that you can learn, I think. And it's really transferable to every industry. Yeah.
No, it's
sure.
a skill. I think we were talking about that again recently, in a sense that we're both applying for grad schemes and all these different future goals. And I think when I was looking at one of the grad schemes I'm applying for, and it's like, oh, so you've got to be able to work on different desks. So one day you'll be doing like culture, but then another day you might be doing like business or sport or opinion and things like that. And I'm sitting here going, I don't know anything about business journalism
Yeah.
or sport journalism, but luckily, you know, a lot about sports journalism. And
Yes.
I think it's that like idea of, you know, if you can't just stay in that one. We talk about finding your niche all the time.
Yeah.
With journalism, you have to be able to, you know, you have to be good at research. You've got to be able to write quickly, like you said, about all these different things, and you've got to be prepared to often talk and write about things that you don't necessarily find, you know, interesting to yourself. So I think that is
Totally.
definitely a skill that I'm trying to learn at the minute, where it's like, okay, yeah, I can enjoy writing pieces for the section that I like, but like in reality, I'm gonna have to do other things to prove kind of my worth to get to the stage of what I want to do. So,
but I think also you get used to diving into different topics. It becomes a bit of like I'm almost thinking of it as a funny experiment. Like, how niche can you go? Like, how am I writing? It's sometimes you just have to zoom out and think, how on earth am I writing about this? But you do gain the confidence to then talk about it and be like, well, I know a lot about this topic, even though I used to be really shy to think like, I don't know anything. And so how am I going to write about it? But then you do just become the expert. And I think you're right. Like, touching on a whole bunch of different things that's part of the job, and you just do become an expert in a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah,
it's almost like you said, we always talk about kind of finding your niche and whether it's a certain form or aspect of journalism, but it's then almost like once you've found that, you then need to go back out and expand it, because the industry is so competitive that, like, for example, my kind of like dream job as such would be to be like a football journalist, but I'm very aware of the fact that I'm not just going to waltz into a job writing about women's football without writing about other sports or covering other topics and stuff as well. I think what you're doing is such a good example of how someone can do that and how someone can continue to build and broaden their skill set, both kind of directly related to journalism and more widely.
Yeah. And I think once you go outside of your topic, you're able to write about your topic better. I know that sounds weird because it has nothing to do with it, but it just gives you a fresh perspective on what people like to read, what different audience, like what works with who. And I think it gives you a fresh pair of eyes to kind of go in and write about something completely different. I honestly, most days will close my laptop looking at medical research and open my laptop to talk about data governance and the EU policies. It's wild. And it's just, I don't know, I find it really fun then to go back. And when people are talking about GDPR at work, I'm like, I actually know a lot about that. And they're like, why?
How?
Yeah.
So kind of going back into your actual job. So you obviously have recently started a job as a policy advisor for Alzheimer's. Yes. And tell us about that. How are you finding it?
Yeah, it's a huge difference. I mean, like, I've never worked in policy before. It's the classic, like, you study so much about it, but you actually don't know what goes into it until you start working it. So I think I'm able to define a bit more what I'm doing, but ask me a couple weeks ago and I was like, I don't know what my job is. I don't even know why I'm here. So yeah, it's been amazing. Again, I wouldn't consider myself ever going into Alzheimer's research UK. I'm really interested in, I guess, like development issues. My focus in my master's was food policy. But now I'm kind of realizing that food policy really links up to kind of what Alzheimer's, it has a lot to do with your gut and there's a lot of preventable factors. And it's all, again, tying into this big circle. So it's been really cool. I work on the diagnostic side of things. So for context, 1 in 2 of us will be impacted by Alzheimer's. So either we'll end up getting it or we'll be caring for someone who gets it. And there are treatments coming out, but the NHS just isn't ready for it. We don't have the tools necessary. So my job basically is to work with lots of clinicians about things I don't really know about yet and try and get into their world so that we can advocate for the government to really push to make more treatment available, because it's a devastating disease. And I reckon most of us will know someone who's gone through, you know, the heartbreak of it. So yeah, that's what I'm getting up to now. And I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would be.
Oh, no, that's really good to hear. And it's, I mean, obviously it's incredible work that you and the Alzheimer's research do. Kind of moving into something quite slightly different, we often ask guests and people that we speak to about how they kind of manage work-life balance in terms of like socially, career-wise, just everything really. And it sounds like you're definitely super busy at the moment, so we'd kind of love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it is a skill I would like. If I could go back, I would really want to learn it really early on in my career. I think, especially working in an agency, I was just on call all the time, and PR and journalism, they never sleep, and there's a lot of it's a really high pace, high demand job. And I think early on I learned that yeah, you will get treated by your employers how you let them treat you. So if you work overtime and you're always available when people ask you to do stuff, I mean, those are good traits, but there is a kind of a line you have to draw early on. So for me, I really do close my laptop but the minute my day is done. And even if you see an email pop in, it's like really easy to want to respond to that. But then that trains people to kind of think, oh, well, you're always on. And I'm not always on. You can't always reach me. And so I just read it, or maybe I don't, and I just leave it and then I respond to it in the morning. And so setting those really strong boundaries, I think, is key, because then you can kind of get it. Otherwise, I would be exhausted all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
It's starting to feel like we asked that question in like a panic. It's like, how do you do it? How are we
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Yeah. You just have to be confident enough to say no to your employers as well. I mean, it's a really good way to gauge. I think when you're interviewing, you kind of need to ask, like, it's an interview for them and you know, so it's like, you ask the interviewer, like, what's work-life balance for you? And for me at Alzheimer's Research UK, my boss was like, it's such a good work-life balance. Like, I've got kids, I work 30 hours, I don't feel pressure. And for me, that's like a complete green flag. Like, yeah, that's somewhere I could work. Whereas I don't want to go in the office every day. I think it's a bit pointless. So for jobs like that, or who aren't going to be flexible with my kind of needs, then it's just a no for me. And you just have to have the confidence to be like, no, it's not for me. Yeah. Yeah.
This kind of links quite well with that. But what advice would you give to people like us who are graduating soon and are kind of figuring out their kind of direction in their career or life path?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think the first is to kind of just have an open mind. Like, yeah, my dream job was completely different to what I'm doing now. But I also think like it is all still part of the greater plan, if that makes sense. Like, I think you're never really pigeonholed into what you're doing. So if you can't really make a wrong step, I think it will all lead you a little bit forward. And I think one of the best pieces of advice someone's given me recently is that when you're graduating, it's the best time to just apply for anything that looks cool, anything that looks interesting, anything that you remotely think I could be good at. That it doesn't have to be journalism. It could be, I really like, I don't know what it could be, training, something, whatever, education, anything like that. And then when it comes time to kind of get serious about your career and you get mid-career, let's say mid-30s, late 30s, then you're the expert in all of these different areas, and it makes you the best candidate for the dream job that you think you really want. And I just think that is kind of what I've tried to live by, because yeah, I just never thought I'd end up doing this kind of work. And I think yeah, it's just good to have an open mind. You just never know where the tide's going to take you. So, and I think being flexible with that. Yeah, and I think when you go into, I wrote something down because I didn't want to forget. I think when you go into kind of interviewing and going into your first job, I think don't undercut yourself. Like, you're smart, you're capable, everything's going to be fine. And there's this daunting anxiety about what it's going to be like and what's going to look like. But it's absolutely going to turn out fine. And you just have to be willing to learn, but also to be confident. Stand up. You've got this.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So this has been so smooth running. I can't believe we're at our last question already. They're like efficient. I love it. But the last thing we like to ask everybody is for a book recommendation. Doesn't necessarily have to be something that you've read super recently, but just in general, if you could kind of recommend one book that you'd like people to read, what would it be?
Well, there's so many good ones. I think for me, the one that I read, actually, probably when I was just about to graduate, I actually think one of my professors recommended it to me right before I was graduating. And it's called The Defining Decade I think it's by Meg Jay. And your 20s are when you make some of the biggest decisions in your whole life. And it like really does shape your path. And I think that feels daunting, but actually it's really exciting. And if you do it well, it really sets you up for success in life. And so, I read that when I graduated, and then I actually read it in my mid-20s to just see how I was tracking. And I've just ordered it on Amazon to reread it again in my late 20s, just because I think, I'm going to exit my 20s swiftly, and I just want to make sure that I've made all the right decisions.
Oh, well, I have to say, you've done great. So I will be ordering that and hoping that it works for me too.
It's such a good pep talk, and like it's from a psychologist, and she just like has all these interviews with all these people in their 20s, and it's just amazing. And I don't know, it's kind of nice to hear other people's 20s anxieties and woes as well. Like we're all in it together, and it's just a weird time. It's a time of change, and everyone's just kind of figuring it out. And I think there's something comforting about hearing other people feeling that same way.
Yeah, no, there is something so comforting, like you said, about the kind of in your 20s genre. It's just drags me in. I love it.
We're all in it.
Anyway, so we've sped through this.
I feel like I might have been talking out.
Usually we get like panicked. I know. But thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. I really enjoyed chatting, catching up. My NMUN crew.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been super interesting to hear everything you have to say. And I think this is an episode especially that I think a lot of people kind of in the same boat as us would really like benefit from kind of hearing your like journey. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck with everything in the future. I'm sure we will bug you again in the future to find out everything that's going on.
Would love to. Absolutely love it. And keep an eye out for my blockchain. No, I'm just kidding. You'll.
I will. I didn't know anything about it, so now I know a little bit more.
Oh dear.
But we will be filming another episode
next week.
So we will see you all very soon. Whoever's watching, whoever's made it to the end again.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.